Welcome, everybody. My name is Jim Klein, and I am a faculty member in the Instructional Systems and Learning Technologies program at Florida State University. I'm also currently the chair of the Department of Educational Psychology and Learning Systems here. And it is my pleasure today to introduce Dr. Florence Martin, who will discuss her work, A Systematic Review of Online Teaching and Learning Research. I'm going to read you a bit of Florence's biography and then provide a couple of my own words. So Dr. Martin is a professor in the Learning Design and Technology program, and she coordinates their EDD program in Educational Leadership, Learning Design and Technology at the University of North Carolina in Charlotte. She teaches courses on instructional systems design, and she teaches 100% online. She's received the Quality Matter certification for 5 of her courses, and she is the recipient of the Crystal Award from the Association of Educational Communications Technology. The Crystal Award is given for innovative and outstanding multimedia-based distance learning courses. Her research focuses on the effective design of instruction and the integration of digital technologies to improve learning and performance. She has published over 50 articles and made over 100 presentations, and she has conducted several studies focusing on the design and integration of online learning environments to improve learner achievement and engagement. In addition to all of the above, I had the privilege of working with Florence while she was a student at Arizona State University. And among all of the students that I have worked with, she is in the top 5% of people who have graduated and gone on to be successful, moving through the ranks of assistant, associate, full professor, having a numerous awards and publications. So it is my pleasure to introduce my colleague and my friend, Dr. Florence Martin.
Okay, perfect, wonderful. So as Dr. Klein said, I'm currently at University of North Carolina, Charlotte, and I'm here today to walk you through a study that I did reviewing research on online teaching and learning from 2009 to 18. So it was a decade. If you'd like to know more about the work I do, there's the link to my website, florencemartin.net. You can look at it anytime later. So I have to start the presentation with a couple of pictures. So the one on my left was at my graduation in December 2005. And as Dr. Klein said, I actually graduated from Arizona State University, where Dr. Klein used to work. And I definitely got into educational technology as an accident. I have a bachelor's in engineering, and then I heard about EdTech and got into it. I didn't plan on becoming an educational technologist growing up, probably like many of you. And then the picture on the right is when Dr. Klein visited Charlotte, actually to do a talk for ISPI Charlotte in March 2018. So between Arizona State and UNC Charlotte, I did several consulting projects. I worked for Intel, and then in Arizona, I worked for University of Phoenix and the Maricopa Community College system before taking my first tenure track position at UNC Wilmington, where I earned tenure, but then I moved to Charlotte where I had to re-earn tenure. And so this is where I am right now. We definitely like living in Charlotte. Okay, so what else do I do? So Dr. Klein mentioned I teach online. I teach courses in learning design and technology. I do program direction and coordination. I am a PI and co-PI of a couple of national science funded grants. I'm interested in the area of digital safety and digital citizenship among K-12 students, so that's something I'm part of. I'm recently appointed as an associate editor for the Online Learning Journal. So that is something I'm doing right now. I also did a couple of special issues, one with for the ETR&D, a systematic review special issue, which actually I co-edited with Dr. Vanessa Denon and Dr. Kurt Bonk, and I'm doing one for the Journal of Research on Technology and Education, a special issue focused on COVID-19 and online learning. I'm doing this one with Dr. Quashia and Dr. Doris Bolliger. And then for external service, I'm actually a board member for the International Board of Standards for Training and Performance, and Instruction, which Dr. Klein used to be on this board. I'm on that board, and then I also serve as an advisory council member for the North Carolina Virtual Public Schools, in addition to doing a lot of internal service. So that's just a big picture of what I do on a daily basis. I don't know why it went to the last slide. Okay, so now that you heard about me, I would like to know who is in the audience. So we have a couple of polls. So Demetrius is going to bring it up. So let's do the first one. Okay, about 88% of you have voted, 91, okay, 94, almost there. Okay, maybe we can close it there, Demetrius. Okay, perfect. So about 31% is doc students, 22 masters, and then 25% alumni, 16% faculty. And actually, I can share results too, right? They can see it. Can you share it with everybody? Okay, there you go. Okay. And faculty 16% and other is 6%. Okay, perfect. Okay, so a variety of you are here, students and faculty and alumni. Okay, let's do the next one. So I would like to know what sector you work for, just to know the instructional context. Okay. 97% of you have voted. We can close it there, Demetrius. Okay, perfect. So about half of you, a little more than half of you are in higher education. Just 1% in K-12 and 21% or 7 of you in industry, a couple of you in military and government, and some of you are full-time students, 18%. Okay, and other 2 of you responded to other. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Demetrius, for helping me with these 2 polls. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, so as I mentioned, I'm going to walk you through a systematic review. Okay, so what is a systematic review? So I got really interested in doing systematic reviews because I wanted to know the big picture of research, right? I've done several primary studies, but then I wanted to have that big picture. So I got interested in doing some secondary research. So systematic reviews aim to examine secondary data by retrieve, synthesize, and assess. So those are the 3 things you do: retrieve, synthesize, and assess existing knowledge in a subject, and it's logical, transparent, and in an analytical manner. So that actually definition came out of the Martin Denon and Bonk article that we wrote, which I'll show you in a minute. And then there is another description which says systematic reviews follows a specific methodology to locate, select, evaluate, analyze, synthesize, and report evidence, and it helps us draw conclusions. So again, it is a study of secondary data, right, or existing primary research, and you follow a systematic process. So that's what a systematic review is. So if you're looking for some good examples of systematic reviews to read, this is one that I have to, introduce. We did this special issue, and as I mentioned, this is an ETR&D special issue that came out in August 2020. The special issue was titled Systematic Reviews of Research, actually on emerging learning environments and technologies. And we had about 16 articles, which included an introduction and a preface, introduction, and a conclusion, and 13 manuscripts. And a great place to go and look at some of those articles. And as I mentioned, that definition I showed you earlier came out of that introduction piece. So in this little visual, on the left, you see where systematic reviews fall. So in this circle of all reviews, you see systematic reviews, a subset, and then meta-analysis actually is a further subset, right, of systematic reviews. So that is something I wanted to share. And if you have questions anytime during the presentation, feel free to enter into the chat. We're going to try and do the questions in the end, but if there's something pressing that comes up and we need to stop and discuss, we can do that. And so this particular article, since we focused on emerging learning environments and technologies, here are 7 areas, that were included in the special issue. There were at least a couple of manuscript articles from FSU. So out of the 7, you see social media, MOOCs, special education technology, mobile learning, game-based learning and gamification, adaptive learning, and learning analytics. So those are some of the areas in that particular special issue. So some of you might be wondering, so what is a systematic review? What are the advantages and disadvantages? Where does it stand in relationship to a meta-analysis? Because there's so many different types of reviews, right? So this was a table I found, and it was actually in the Journal of Pre-Hospital and Disaster Medicine. So one thing I've realized now that I've started doing systematic reviews and meta-analysis is those in the field of medicine do a lot of systematic reviews and meta-analysis. And then I think we have those in education. I actually went to a workshop. It was a 3-day meta-analysis workshop I attended last December. And about half the class were, those from the education field. And then the other half were like doctors, like physicians. So it was interesting to see that they were all very interested in doing meta-analysis too. So there's a lot of research, in the medicine and focused journals, which we can also learn from. So this is one table I brought from that particular article. And so if you see, so what are the advantages of doing a systematic review? So since you're following a systematic process, the bias is minimized. You create a protocol, right, ahead of time before you do the coding. And there is a very clearly defined search and evaluation, and whatever you do somebody else should be able to reproduce it, because it's very transparent. The process is very transparent, and in the end there's high validity of conclusions. There are some disadvantages. It's very it's kind of a rigid process, right? So you have to follow the guidelines, and then you have to have a valid literature base. Since this is a secondary research, if you don't have a good number of primary studies in there, you're not able to do a systematic review. So that's important. Robust literature, and then and if you have a lot of different study methods, that might affect your results. So what are some of the applications of systematic review? You're able to identify relevant evidence. You are looking at quality of evidence and working on a non-biased synthesis of literature. You're interpreting evidence in an impartial manner, and then it helps with policies, developing policy standards. There it says health policy, because this came from a medicine focused journal, but education policy too, because sometimes you're not able to come to conclusion in 1 or 2 primary studies, especially primary studies. One primary study might come in favor of one intervention, and then another primary study might have a different finding. So when you're doing secondary research, you're looking at the big picture, a lot of studies put together, and then you're able to come to some conclusion. So that's the advantage. I'm not going to get into detail of all the other ones. Actually, I have more on the next slide too. But then, you have meta-analysis, which is primarily done quantitative. Here, what you're doing is similar to a systematic review, but then you're determining that single estimate, right? What is the effect of that particular treatment or the relationship? You can do correlational too. And then I think they've included meta-analysis qualitative because you could also examine the qualitative aspect in a quantitative meta-analysis studies. So that is what I think they've included there. Can we actually, let's go to the next screen. So here are some more terminology in terms of review: scoping review, narrative review, critical review, conceptual review, state-of-the-art review. I have not done these different types of review. I've done only systematic review and meta-analysis. But from what I see in this table, a scoping review has got a little bit more fluidity. This use of fluid literature search, broader review topics, and then in the narrative review or critical review, those reviews, the researcher determines the literature to include. So you probably you can pick and choose, so there is a little bit more bias. It's not as structured, and so cannot be reproduced. So that's the sense I get from this table. Okay, so now that you're all introduced to what is a systematic review, the study we are going to talk about today is this recent article. It's actually a 2020 article. I don't have page numbers yet because it's coming out in the December issue. It's under online first right now. It's coming out in the December issue of Computers and Education. Along with me on this article, we have Ting San, who is one of our doctoral students in educational research, and then Dr. Carl Westein, who's a research methodologist here at UNC Charlotte with expertise in evaluation. So this was the team who worked on this. So when I do systematic reviews, what I like to do is first look to see what other systematic reviews have been done. Is it even necessary for you to do a systematic review, right? There might be one that's currently being done or published already. So there is a lot of systematic reviews done in the area of online learning. But what happens is it's all on specific topics within online learning, right? So in this particular review, we were looking at research themes in online learning. So not on like a specific, like, like just on engagement or just on design, or we were not looking at it. We were looking broadly on research themes. So here are 3 studies, that we used to compare and, add our findings in comparison to the others. So one was in 1990 to 99, 93 to 2004, and 2000 to 2008. I think at least 1 or 2 of these were also focus broadly on distance education and not necessarily only on online learning, because I think probably the 1990 to 99, online learning, I mean, I would say it came about 96. So I think they used the term DE more broadly in 1 or 2 of these studies. So what did they find as research themes being studied, in their reviews? So you see in the Berg and Rosowski article, they found that design issues were discussed, learner characteristics were discussed, strategies, to increase interactivity and active learning were discussed. In the Talent Runnels one, course environment, and they had several sub topics under course environment and also learner outcomes. And then the Zawacki-Richter one, interaction and communities of learning, instructional design, and learner characteristics. So these were the topics that were mostly studied in the online learning research literature. But then what was studied the least? So lowest number of studies, cost-benefit trade-offs. Those days when, the initial days of online learning, is it even worth to do it? Folks were having that discussion, right? Equity and accessibility was not studied as much. Learner support was not studied. And then in Talent Runnels, learner characteristics, interestingly, learner characteristics in the other 2 studies fell as more studied. In this one, it was least studied. And then institutional and administrative factors were also least studied. Zawacki, again, you see management and organization, research methods in DE and knowledge transfer was not studied much, globalization, innovation and change, and costs and benefits. So that's all the lit review I'm going to show you today. So those are the three studies, to show you what was studied and what was least studied. So what we did, we came up with our own classification. So building on these three reviews, and some primary research too, we came up with this classification of 12 different research themes. I'm going to walk you through from the bottom to top. We started at the learner level, so learner characteristics, learner outcomes, and engagement. Okay, so focusing on the learner, some themes, and then the learner level is actually nested within the course and instructor level. So some of this engagement could also be a relationship between learner and instructor, right? So at the course and instructor level, instructor characteristics, technologies, evaluation and QA, assessment, facilitation, design and development. So those were some themes. And then organizational level, which we saw were least studied in the prior, at least two out of the three studies, right? Institutional support, leadership, policy and management, access, culture, equity, inclusion, and ethics. So those fell under the organization level. So this is kind of the classification we came up with for coding in this particular systematic review. So before I go into methods, we have a question for you. So Demetrius is going to help us with this poll. So we're going to do poll 3 first. So I showed you the 12 themes. We would like to know, which theme do you think is the most studied? So Zoom poll doesn't allow for more than 10 items. So I had 12 items. So we've created the poll with 10 items. So we'll just see what you think. Okay. You can pick only one, but pick, what do you think was most studied in the current literature, 2009 to 2018? Okay, 82% of you have voted. Okay, for the sake of time, maybe should we close it? Okay, interesting. Okay, 28% of you said engagement. Okay, that's amazing. Okay, how many of you read the article? So that's pretty good. Okay, and then learner outcome and then learner characteristics. Okay, let's do the next one. So what do we think was least studied? Okay, institutional support. Okay. Okay. And we can close the poll, Demetrius. Yeah, so majority of them said institution. Actually, the last two items we didn't include, right? Okay. Okay, so let's close that and keep moving. And I'm going to walk you through the methods and the results quickly. So the purpose of this study was to examine publication trends in online learning research during the last 10 years and compare it with the previous years, right? So here are our 3 research questions. So first one is more like a publication pattern, articles published and how are they from different journals, we were looking at that. And second one, we were looking at the research themes, frequency of research themes. And third one, we were looking at research methods and settings. So methods wise, we followed the IES procedure. So the 5 steps, developing the IES, what works clearinghouse, systematic review procedure, developing the review protocol, identifying relevant literature, screening studies, reviewing articles, and reporting findings. So we just looked at one database. Okay, so just the Education Research Complete database. So definitely, we probably have excluded so many that didn't make it into this. And we use only 5 keywords: online learning, teaching program, online course, and online education. Again, which means we've definitely excluded a lot of studies that didn't make it in this. But so that's a limitation, but we had to do that just to make sure, because even with that database and articles, we had 3,332 articles that pulled up. Okay. And what we did was, because of that huge number and we couldn't code all of that, we decided to choose 12 journals. Again, so now we are choosing 12 journals and excluding a few other journals. I'll show you the list of journals shortly. And then which resulted in 753 articles that we reviewed. And then after reviewing abstract, we excluded 134, which resulted in 619 articles in the study. So we primarily coded from the abstract. Unless the abstract was not well written and we didn't have the data, we had to go into the full text. And trust me, we found several abstracts like that. So for secondary research, if you rely on abstract, it's important for primary study authors to include good abstracts. So all 3 researchers were involved in creating the code book. 2 of us coded. The doctoral student did majority of the coding, and I coded for, I coded 10% of the articles. And then, so the code book included the 12 research themes, which I've already showed you. And then 4 research settings: higher ed, continuing ed, K-12, corporate/military. And then 3, we just coded for the methods. We didn't go into the level of design because, we were coding from the abstract again. We used MaxQDA for coding. This is primarily a qualitative software, but we wanted to try it out. In other studies, I've just used Google Forms, sometimes even directly in Excel. So in this, I was able to import an Excel sheet, and all the 753 articles came in as a document. And so each document, this is what somebody saw: the title, the tags, and the abstract. And you see the code system, how we created it: research setting, research methods, and research theme. And so if we saw the particular, we coded for all 3, we just have to like drag and drop it, highlight it, drag and drop it, and then it automatically tabulated it for us anytime. One of the challenges, especially with themes, sometimes you might see more than one theme and you have to make the decision. We decided not to code multiple themes, just code the one that most strongly relates to, especially if you have experimental studies, independent variables, dependent variables, so they might fit in different themes. So that was one of the challenges, and we discussed that in our manuscript too. So for data analysis, we primarily did frequency tables, and then we did, for the trends, we did a line chart, and we gave descriptive information of all the themes. And then also we went into sub-themes for learner characteristics and engagement. And then for research settings and methodology, we also did cross-tab analysis, and I'll show you that data. Okay, so are you all with me? Everything clear until this point? You ready for some results? So this is what we found in terms of journal. So these were the 12 journals. I'll give you a few seconds to look through. So we picked journals that have been around the whole decade, so that's something we did. So it's a combination of like EdTech, online learning focused journals. So we did not really include discipline specific journals. So that's something we did not. So you see iRodel had the highest, which was 24%, and then followed by internet and higher education, computers and education, online learning, and distance education. So those were the top 5. And then other journals you see from 2% all the way to 6%. We also included a column. So the articles published, what percentage of it was to all the manuscripts they published in that decade. So iRodel, for example, was at 22%, so they do publish on other topics, or it didn't pull up in our search. We excluded editorials and reviews and, theoretical pieces. We looked only at empirical research. So that's something we looked at too. So those were the top 5. So if you're publishing on online learning, those 5 definitely take it. The Journal of Online Learning came only at the 6th place because, it has not been around for a full 10 years. Actually, we actually included that though, because I think it has been used as what is it called? No, actually, it has been around. Only thing, what happened was it was with a different affiliation, right? It was called the Jolt, and then it became the Online Learning Journal. So I think, if you look at the numbers, it got split between online learning and Jolt. So if you look, so it was 72 and 39. So that's why, the rankings are different for those two. We did not include the JOLR, Journal of Online Learning Research, I think, which is a K-12 focused one because that was relatively new. Here is the one by year. So you can see the increase, right? 2009, 40s to, there was in between a little bit of a dip and then again went back in 2018. Imagine where this would be if we did this now in 2020. So when we did the study, we didn't think about COVID was nowhere around. So I think now if somebody looks at research in 2020, 2021, 2022, I think definitely we're going to see a lot more studies because I think the whole world is now doing some kind of online learning or remote learning. So I think the numbers might look different now. So this was from that. And here are the themes. And I think you guys were all right on, engagement and learner characteristics were the top 2. And in the least studied, actually, we didn't include the last 2 on the list because we didn't have room in the poll. And those 2, you picked institutional support, which came kind of, low 2 actually, but then actually instructor characteristics and then institutional support were pretty low. So engagement and learner characteristics were the top 2, 28% and 21%. And the lowest instructor characteristics was 3%. And then the next one was leadership, policy, and management was 4%. And actually, interestingly, course design and development came low on our study. And here is why I think it might have come low, because probably design and development focused work are being published maybe in other journals. That is one, or maybe the title did not capture it. That is my assumption, because I'm assuming there is design and development focused work being done, but I think there's still a need, definitely still a need for more design and development focused work in the context of online learning. We broadly study design and development, but I think in online learning, I think we definitely need more studies in that. So I don't know, anything surprising to you all? I'll give you a minute to look at it. We'll talk about this. You'll see this again going forward in another slide too. So those were the themes. Oops, whenever I click on that thing, it's taking me all the way to the end. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay, so for engagement and learner characteristics, what we decided to do was we did sub-themes. So the engagement sub-theme, we categorized them into 7 categories. You're all instructional technology students, alumni, faculty. So you've seen, the literature on this. There is frameworks in place, theories in place, right? So presence, there were about 50 studies on presence, interaction. So those 2 came up the highest, and then community too was studied. And then we saw some studies on participation, some on collaboration. We used the term involvement to broadly, some studies were very broad, so we put them under involvement. And then there was some focusing on communication in online learning. So that is, we tried to go one more level for the ones where we had a lot of studies. And then learner characteristics, we coded them under self-regulation, motivational, academic, affective, cognitive, and demographic. So self-regulation, which is controlling learners' behavior, emotions, and thoughts to achieve specific learning and performance goals, that is where the highest number was. So those 2, we did some sub-themes. And then, so research setting, majority of the studies were in higher ed. Again, it was not surprising. We did not use any K-12 focused journals too, right? That could have been. And then continuing ed, K-12 were in the 50s, and then corporate and military, we found 3 studies. So as I said, we did a cross-tab analysis of the setting and the theme. So I'll give you a few seconds to look at it, just to see if any of these numbers interest you. Okay, go to the next one. And then we did method, which was quantitative methods, which the most 324, and qualitative was 200 in between. And then there's mixed methods too, which is great. So about 95 studies used both. And we did another cross tab here. So you can look at that. So we did by methods and themes. So definitely learner characteristics were more quantitative in nature. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so comparison. So what we did was I actually showed you this image early on. I didn't have the last column, right? I didn't have the current study, but I showed you the 3 studies. So we kind of added this at the end again in the discussion, and we included this study. So learner characteristics and engagement, which most of you, even in the poll you identified. So that was definitely mostly studied. And then Lee studied again, we left the same topics from the previous table. So this is not mapped to our themes, but, from the themes from the other 3. So equity and accessibility, institutional and administrative factors, management and organization was Lee studied. Actually, learner support too, because it was part of institutional support. We called ours as institutional support, which was both learner and faculty support. So I should have actually checked that one as well. So, those were the least studied themes. So if you look broadly, I think a lot of the organizational topics, right, were definitely not studied as much, and compared to the other ones. So limitations, definitely a limitation that we included only 12 journals. There's always room to do more, but I mean, we knew we couldn't analyze 4,000 abstracts, so we went with the 12. And then we used only 5 search terms. So I get emails sometimes saying, why was my article not included? Because, we include the 619 studies in the appendix, because, if it didn't pull up in those terms and you didn't use it in the title and keyword, that means that article didn't make it. And coding process, even though they say systematic review is unbiased, in the end, there is a bias, so you pick which theme might best fit for this particular study, right? Especially if there's more than one theme that really stands out. So I think there is still a little bit of bias involved. So those are some limitations. Implications for future research. Any of you doing work on online learning, definitely a need for more research at the organizational level. The topics that I showed you, we need more studies. And then the sub-themes, we went in depth on engagement and learner characteristics. Hopefully that has some ramifications for teaching and learning professionals. So those are some implications to walk away with. And I know we have some practitioners in the room too, so I kind of wanted to end with this. So those were my 12 themes. So what I try to do is, and I research primarily in the area of online teaching and learning. So I went and I kind of did this reflection. what studies have I done and how have I contributed, to practice? In the end, research should make a connection with practice, right? So I try to, if any of you are interested, practitioners especially, I have instruments on some of these. So I've looked at engagement strategy. So there's instruments for both students and faculty, how students can be engaged. Learner characteristics, I've done student readiness type of an instrument. Instructor characteristic, I've looked at faculty readiness, especially in COVID times. I get a lot of requests wanting to use that, because I've used that in professional development. What do you need to do to have your faculty be ready to teach online? So some of these instruments help with developing workshops, and I've done that myself too. Sometimes, the instrument comes, I design the instruments when I have to do a workshop, and then, vice versa, I've done both. Course design, I've looked at design elements, engagement strategies, and then for facilitation, I've done facilitation strategies. I've done a little bit of work on support, more professional development support. Definitely, I think there's more work to do. And I was looking, what are the areas I would like to, the ones that are not highlighted, I definitely need to do more work. Access, culture, equity, inclusion, and ethics, definitely, important topics. There is a gap in the literature, need for more work on that. Same with leadership, policy, and management. As much as we have literature on instructional designers, and I think when they move on to those leadership roles, in administration and management, we need more studies to guide that. There might be work in reports, but these are not making into peer-reviewed journals. So that could be another reason why we are not seeing it, right? So a lot of other writing probably is happening in other places. And then assessment too. I haven't done a whole lot of work focusing entirely on assessment. So hopefully, some of this work, if you want to look at that link, want to download, take a look at some of those instruments. Hopefully it'll benefit some of you. And then here are the references that I used. So the article I walked you through is from Computers and Education. This, if you want to read more about systematic review or like an intro to systematic review, so that article I showed you, the ETR&D one that came out, is good. And then the last one, the tables that I showed you, right, on the pre-hospital and disaster medicine from Stratton. So that's the one that I used. So though that comes to the end, I was supposed to stop at 2:15, so I done pretty good on time. So if you have questions, we can chat the next few minutes, but if you have questions and want to talk even after the conversation today, there is my email for any of you who need it. So I am going to stop sharing.
Florence, there are some things in the chat. So okay, let's see, we get to some of those questions. I saw, in fact, I'll start from the bottom up. I see that Karen Metzger says, what are the conclusions for practitioners? What factors, for example, might enhance learner engagement?
Okay, so from this study, I cannot give you just practical recommendations, right? From this particular systematic review, what I can tell you as implication is engagement has been studied so much, which means it is important, right? But then I can give you examples from another study if you want, what factors enhance learner engagement. Actually,
and Florence, let me break in. Since you do a lot of this stuff as a practitioner yourself, why don't you also answer the question from what you do to enhance learner engagement based on your own practice and research?
Yeah, definitely. I'll do that. So I am actually going to put this link for Karen. Karen, this is an instrument. If you want to, and for any of you, you want to pull up. This article actually is published in Online Learning Journal. And so what we did in this was we used Moore's framework, the 3 different interaction methods. And then are you able to pull it up? Okay, it's not pulling up for me. So we looked at like different ways. So what do you do, to engage with your learner? What do you do? Like, are you building an icebreaker activity in there? You giving them an opportunity to introduce themselves? Is there learner-learner interaction, right? Are you making them facilitate discussions? Are they doing peer reviews? So simple things. And a lot of this also follows Quality Matters guide standards, right? For those of you who might use Quality Matters, the 42 standards, engagement is important. So I think in this list, I can't remember exactly how many engagement strategies, but these are practical strategies. And as an instructor, what do you do, right? Are you being present? Are you being present in the discussions? Okay, I just pulled it up. I'll tell you exactly how many. Actually, 29 strategies. We use 29 strategies. So learner, icebreaker, moderating, giving them the choice in readings, giving them opportunity to do not only text-based discussions, but audio, video files, peer discussions. I talked about it. Peer review, I already mentioned. And even like evaluating each other's work on projects. And for as an instructor, you sending regular announcements, doing course orientations. Do you have an instructor presence in the class? Do you record a short video, for each module? So those are some things. And even feedback. Are you providing feedback regularly in the class? And is your feedback only text-based? Are you doing audio, video-based feedback? Are you doing synchronous sessions? That's a big one, right? These days, that is a big topic. I mean, asynchronous, synchronous, what is better? So here schools started, K-12 especially, started asynchronous, then they moved entirely to synchronous. So where is engagement when it comes with the different modalities? And then also on contents. So definitely, Karen, take a look at that instrument, and also that article, it's in the online learning journal, has definitely practical advice for practitioners.
Thank you, Florence. What designs did you use when you were classifying these things as quantitative? There's a lot of different quantitative designs. Did you find that many people were just throwing surveys at people, or were they actually doing experimental, quasi-experimental research?
So that is a great question. We did
that's why I asked it.
Yeah, we did not code for designs, right? And as I mentioned, because, we coded at the abstract level, I definitely recommend some systematic reviews to also code for designs. So I don't have numbers to give you, but I think we saw a variety. We saw experimental studies, we saw lots of surveys too, but we did not code for it. So I cannot give you a number for it.
Well, I mean, I'm not surprised that you didn't see a lot of design and development, design-based research. I mean, I lament, but people aren't doing it. But I was surprised when you said there was quantitative was the highest, because a lot of work that some of the people on this call, Lauren Bagdy, Jenny Smith, the work that we've been doing. Qualitative is the coin of the realm right now, Florence. And so that's why I'm kind of interested in what your thoughts are. Do you really think people are doing experiments?
Probably not through experimental studies, maybe quasi and survey also fit in there, right?
Of course, yes.
Yeah, so probably, again, since we didn't code for design, I really can't give you an answer on that.
Let's see, we've got some more questions in the chat. Let me find those. Where does development and application of learning analytics fall into your research themes? Did you examine learning analytics in relationship to the categorization of your methods? So really the question has to do with learning analytics and what you saw, or even beyond your study, what do you see for learning analytics?
Yeah, so, method-wise, it would have definitely fallen under quantitative study, right? Theme-wise, it could have been in different places. If the learning analytics was used for the design and development, it could have fallen under design and development, or if it was used for facilitation, if an instructor was using it, then it could have fell under facilitation. So we didn't have learning analytics as a category. So since these categories were directly focused on online learning, learning analytics could have fallen in any one of those, I think, or learner characteristics even, right? So
another question is, did you search how did you use the keywords to search? Did they search all through the article, just in the abstract, just in the title? So where were the keywords? So, like if you did a crawler and you were looking,
yeah, we did. I think we did title and we did keywords. Some databases also have an option to do keyword search. So we did title and we did keywords. We definitely did not look at the entire article. If you do entire article, you'll be in like hundreds of thousands.
There are robots that can do that for
but data mining, we tried that once for another study, and I didn't find the result as meaningful. Like, at least what they pulled was not the same as doing it. I think it's got pros and cons. You can definitely reach a wider range of articles, but in this case, we didn't do the full text.
One of the questions that just arrived is, in step 4 of your systematic review process, where you actually reviewed the articles, what method did you use for that review?
So that is where, do you see how we used MaxQDA? So once we had a code book, and then when we had, the abstract in there, then we would read the title, the tags, and the abstract, and then go through the 3 different things we coded for. So we coded for the theme. So we'll start with that and go through it to see, which theme aligns the most, and then the setting, and then the method. So that is what we did. So the review exactly happened within MaxQDA, that screen that kind of I showed you. And once that one article was done, we moved to the next. But then actually, so if there were questions, if we couldn't identify, if the doc student couldn't do it, we met bi-weekly. So she would have a list of numbers, and then we discussed it as a team of 3 to make sure that we picked the best. If there was any confusion. So that's something we did.
Florence, you're great.
Thank you, Dr. Klein, for inviting me. And I have to add, I would not be who I am today if not for Dr. Klein. So I'm always thankful to him.
Thank you, Florence. Please say hello to your mother for me.
I will. Good luck to you all, to everyone.